Welcome to the Gaming Sanctuary.
All content shown in GS belong to their respective owners for great justice.
Hello, YouTube family. Today's presentation is what I'd like to become a small series of videos outlining the Konami Picno. I'll try to keep this live segment brief. For those of you who haven't heard of this system, it's currently Konami's only entry into the video game console market, unless of course you count the little mini TurboGrafx NEC console lineup that they're putting out. Seems like everybody's gotta have one of those little mini consoles these days. It's a children's edutainment system that beat Sega's Pico to market by a few months. Interestingly enough, even the naming conventions are similar. Picno, Pico, only one letter difference, which I find rather interesting. I don't think they anticipated it like that, it just wound up happening that way. It was released in late 1992, I believe, in September or October, and came in two versions. The regular Picno released in 1992 on the top, and the slightly redesigned Picno 2 in 1993 to the bottom. I also lined up some of the software on the sides here that I'll be showcasing in more detail here a little later, and I have a few more titles, but currently own about roughly half of the known Picno library. They were pretty tough to come by. There were roughly 20 titles or so released for the Picno. That's including miscellaneous software, not necessarily like quote-unquote game software. And I'll try to move this tripod around a little bit and get a better view of these here. Let's see what we can do here. Zoom in. There's that Picno boy. Picno 2. By the way, for those curious, this was the mascot character right here that we put in our little community / discussion / whatever you want to call it tab. And I'm gonna try and move this up right here if I can get it to stay focused. Zoom in a bit. Regular Picno. And we've got a save card right here, but I'll get into that more in a moment. And we got let me go that way. Yeah. A few of the titles right here. And right here, but you'll get a better view of those later, so we don't really have to worry about that too much right now. Let's see if I can zoom back out. Get that situated properly. Okay. Alright, I'm actually learning. Took me long enough, right? And anyway, with that out of the way, it's essentially a drawing tablet with a few buttons to interact with on the left and right. We've got these buttons right here, and then there's also a stylus right here that you would use to draw on the tablet. This is the boundaries, the perimeter, so to speak. And this is the safe area that you can use when you're drawing on the tablet that affects the TV. Everything within that rectangular space is the area that will be shown on the TV when you're drawing, which, I mean, 1992, kids saw it and stuff like that. This was emerging technology, not necessarily the first on the market, because there were other, you know, platforms at the time that were kind of similar to this, like Sony's 1989 HBA 5000 and successor line of sketchpads and animation computers, which I believe were interestingly known as part of the hidden MSX hardware library, but I could be wrong on that. This is just random miscellaneous information I found on the internet, but I believe it comes from people who've done their homework, and I chalk it up as a pretty reliable source, but I'm not going to quote it as the Bible or anything like that. And the interesting thing too is that the games themselves came on really tiny cartridges, kind of like the what is it? The Sega Master System Sega cards and the PC Engine's Hue cards, things of that nature. But they're slightly thicker and almost square shaped, making them some of the smallest carts ever released. And I have one behind me. I'll grab that real quick and put it on here so you can see what it's like. Let me adjust this camera a little bit. It's getting a little out of focus. But this is the save card right here. Let me see if I can focus that. Focused it a little bit. But anyway, this is what it looks like. Ah, there we go. Much better. This is what it looks like. It's roughly about 2.5 inches long by 2 inches wide, so it's almost square shape. And this was basically like a memory card, so to speak, pretty much, if you want to look at it that way. Like the ones they had for Sega CD and PlayStation and Sega Saturn and stuff like that, you know, all the systems that would come around the time or after the Picno. But for its time, it was still a little progressive, I guess. And the cool thing I think about the Konami Picno is obviously because it's within the Konami family of software and, you know, everything that they've released. There's a few cameo appearances that make their way onto the platform from titles such as like Daytona, Twin B, Parodius Die, Gradius, and Gradius? Anyway, titles from Konami's catalog and more besides those listed. And this is a system where a few of Konami's designers and producers and stuff got their start, such as Akari Uchida, who would later go on to be known for Love Plus and Tokimeki Memorial Girl Side. And he worked with a number of little individuals, teams. They had different teams at the time for the Konami Picno, and they spent roughly about 5 to 6 months on average per software title, and this is where a lot of them got their programming experience and stuff from, so it was an experimental venture for sure on Konami's part, but I mean, humble beginnings. It is what it is. People gotta make a living, right? And I mean, you go to school, you get a specialty, they want to hire you to do something. You do it, you may not do it in the capacity that you originally intended, but it's out there, can't take it back, right? And it should go without saying that these units were not exactly cheap when they were released. The first Picno cost as much as 29,800 yen, and even the almost half-price Picno 2 was still 15,800 yen, which is roughly $275 and $145 USD, respectively, in today's market. To put that into perspective, the same units costed more than $500 and $250, respectively, matched for inflation, so, I mean, the software was cheaper, which was the whole reason they used the small card format, the card format, if you want to call it that. And the titles range typically between 3,800 to 4,500 yen, though the system save card was 5,800 yen, which is a little ridiculous to me for the simple fact that not a whole lot of games used it, but I mean, that same could go for a couple other platforms at a time, so again, it is what it is, I guess. If you had that kind of disposable income back then it was a novel piece of hardware, but it was easily eclipsed by Sega's Pico, which would release a short time later, in 1993. Still, I was a big fan of Konami back in the day. I grew up with them and their Ultra Games label and their different subsidiaries and stuff like that, so I had many fond memories of Konami back in the day. I even had a lot of their really goofy ventures, like the, was it the Laser Invasion title with the laser scope headset and microphone thing that they had? I don't exactly remember what it's called, but I mean, you pretty much just screamed and it would do stuff on your screen and stuff like that, and your neighbors would tell you to quiet down or, you know, shut the hell up. Whatever neighbors do, you know. And I just wanted to get this Picno library mainly for posterity because it was just such a curiosity to me personally. It was a Japan-only system, a Japan-only line of software and hardware, but I mean, I went out of the way to import it, and there's really very little information about it, so I was hoping to add to the collective archive of knowledge out there about the Picno. And I'm trying to get as many of these titles complete in the box as possible so I can put up some cleaned up high quality scans as well as some video clips and associated memorabilia to preserve the system. There's also an ambitious group over at Team Europe. I did a little bit of research on them, and they actually dumped some of these games in the hopes of eventually getting this thing's library working in an emulator like MAME. I don't know if this ever saw the light of day or the status of how these ROMs work in MAME or anything like that. I believe it's inconclusive at this time. I could be wrong. If anybody has any additional information, please let me know. I'd love to know the exact specs for this system, but I'm not that technically inclined and I couldn't go picking this thing apart and telling you personally. So if anybody has any information on the specs, I'd love to know that too. It's got mono sound, and it's got 16-bit-ish graphics. I want to say the graphics are somewhere between an NES and a Super Nintendo. Some things are far too detailed to be replicated on, say, the NES as far as like the color palette and stuff like that. But the resolution itself isn't really that high, and I mean, it only uses composite video, so, I mean, it is what it is. Honestly, I mean, the Sega Pico, as far as a similar edutainment platform, is superior in nearly every regard, but this is still an interesting piece of hardware for hardware's sake. As these units are quite old, you have to apply quite a bit of pressure on the pads right here because they don't register very well. I believe reading a blog on a Japanese website, and I'll have references linked on the side of the video in the description field, but I believe a blog was also saying that even when these things were new, you had to actually put quite a bit of pressure on these things to get them to register. So I honestly don't know. I haven't had the Picno very long, and it's secondhand, and one of them's actually refurbished, so it's better than it's been, because it's been sitting around for like pretty much almost 30 years, but I mean, it works good for me and I can't really complain. But if I try to imagine a child using this with the amount of pressure that you had to apply on this thing, I think it would actually be a little frustrating, to be perfectly honest, because I'm a grown man and it takes me a little bit of effort to get this thing to work. So we'll put some links and everything, but with that said, please enjoy these clips of the Konami Picno software. Thank you very much for watching.
時計で遊ぼう。1時。2時。3時。4時。5時。6時。7時。8時。9時。10時。11時。12時。バイバイ。何回泣いたかな？始まり始まり。よーい、始め。何回泣いたかな？あったり。よーい、始め。何回泣いたかな？バイバイ。ロボット工場。 4つ、5つ、6つ、7つ。バイバイ。手を使って選んでね。 うよ。始まるよ。丸。ペイント。ライン。ペイント。カラーパレット。ペイント。ワープ。ボックス。ペン。コピー。消しゴム。ペン。縁取り。ペイント。スタンプ。バックカラー。マジック。ペイント。マジック。ペイント。ペン。 ペイント